Okay, so we're going to start today by talking about some of the basic structures in the hand, or at least like simplified versions of them. So we're going to start with kind of a long rectangular shape. It's going to represent the forearm. So the forearm is really like cylindrical. It's like a squished cylinder, but we're going to represent it as being kind of more rectangular to start today. Alright, so something like that. Okay. This is the forearm, like right here. And now I want to add a wrist. So I've actually got, kind of handy. If we look at this wrist structure here, we want to kind of simplify this wrist into sort of a half circular shape. I'm going to try to demonstrate a bunch of things in this first hand, so hopefully we're alright. Alright, so I want it to be circular, but also have some thickness to it. So imagine if you cut a hockey puck in half, kind of how that would look. That's going to be our simplified wrist shapes. These are all simplified shapes. Next, we want to have kind of a square for the palm. So if you look at my palm, you can see if we really simplified it out and cut out this thumb here, we'd have something that would sort of resemble the square. So to start off with, we'll keep it real simple. Later we'll talk about like having curves up here and maybe it being a little longer in this middle section, but for now we'll just keep it pretty much square. Alright, and we'll add a little thickness to that. Okay, so let's talk about fingers. So your fingers are going to be about as long as your palm. So let's see, let's try not to include that wrist portion here. So let's call that the wrist area. See if I can draw on there. Yeah. So that'll be like where my palm starts. But that's about the same length. The middle finger's a little longer. The pinky's a little shorter. But we want it to be about the same length as the palm, generally speaking. So I'm going to show you a couple of different ways to draw fingers. So in order to do that, I'm going to start with kind of a hand pose like, yeah, that's probably the best way to do it. Like this. Alright? Yeah, something like this. I see it a little more like this from my side. Anyway, we've got a couple of options. One thing we might want to do is figure out how to place the fingers. So I'm actually going to divide this in two and then divide each of the sections in two. So I have an idea of how much room each finger should take up. Now, maybe there's a little less on the pinky and the ring finger and a little more on the middle finger and the index finger. But this will help give me like some idea so I don't end up with a lot of leftover room or not enough space for all the fingers. So I'm going to draw these ones first. I'm going to draw these two together as sort of a mitt shape. So instead of drawing them individually, I will draw them together to start as kind of a, like I said, mitt shape. So imagining that I have a glove where they both fit into the same slot and what that would look like. Again, I want this to be about this length. Cool. So another way I might draw fingers, depending on how I'm drawing them, is I might just do kind of a gesture-y finger. Not really worry about where the knuckles are right now, but just kind of capture the general trajectory of the finger itself. So something really loose and kind of free. And I'm just sketching lightly for now, and I can come back in and get the details later. But what we want to worry about first is just getting the basic structures and the simplified structures of the hand, the basic shapes. So for this one, I might make like a wire frame. This one's got a lot of bends and a lot of stuff going on. So I'm going to kind of, come up here a little bit, and then down, and then to here. So imagine I'm making like a clay sculpture, and I have a maquette, which is like a wire skeleton that goes inside. Just imagine where that would go. And then after I get that, I can bulk it up and make it into like an actual finger shape. So depending on what kind of gesture I have in my hand, or what kind of pose I've got going on, I might want to use different methods. But those are 3 different sort of ideas. If you've got a lot of bends to the fingers, maybe doing that wireframe is a better way to do it. So you can position the knuckles right and get the pose. If you've got like a lot of gesture to the hands, like really expressive poses, like, we might go with more of this like sort of gestural technique. And if you've got hands where they're like, you've got fingers that are together, you might want to use this mitt technique. And I'd come back in here and separate the fingers later as needed. Depending on what I was drawing and how much detail I had going on, I might not even need to separate the fingers at all. And I might come in and try not to get over detailed with this, but I might come in and make corrections and fix this up a little bit. Right. I'll go into a little more detail later. And then we've got the thumb. So each of these fingers has 3 sections, right? You've got one, then a middle, and then a fingertip. The thumb's first section is joined in with the hand. So we've got kind of a bone like this. It's a little bit shorter than the metacarpals right here. So it probably goes out to about here. You can think about it as being a cylinder. But then it's closed in with flesh. So it's like attached to the hand fully. And then it's got 2 more sections that are going to be outside the hand. So it'll be more like this. Probably thicken that up a little bit. It'll be a little thicker than the other fingers probably. Okay? So after that I can go in and I can draw on top. And I can add detail as needed, depending on what I'm drawing. I don't want to get into too much detail today. It's really important that we kind of get everything in order. And what I mean by that is, we want to think about this simplified structure as being the foundation. And we don't want to start building on the foundation too much until we are able to make a good foundation. So if you think about building a house, if you don't know how to, if you haven't succeeded in pouring a concrete slab, there's no point in building on top of it. You want to either like break it up and start again, or move to a different spot and try redoing it. But you don't want to build on top of it, on top of a structure, a foundation that's not solid. Okay? But to give you the idea of where we go from here and why we're drawing all this weird stuff, that's kind of how it starts to get. Alright? I'm going to draw one from the reference sheet now. I'm going to do the one in the bottom right. I showed you the sheet earlier. You can see it on screen. It's not going to be in the video, but got kind of a really interesting pose there. I'm going to do it over here. And you might play around with doing these different sizes and try to figure out what's going on. So this one's a little more complex. This is actually fairly complex. So I've got my sort of rectangular structure here. I've got my wrist structure coming like this. And the hand is like twisting away from me. So then I've got kind of a fold. The hand's kind of folding in like this. So the top is actually dropped down quite a bit, and then it sort of wraps around like this. We're not going to be able to see all of this stuff in the final drawing here. This is what's kind of going on underneath all that. Right? And then it comes down this way. Alright. So for this one, we've got like really bent up fingers. This actually like wraps around a little bit more, I think. Kind of like over to here almost. That looks a little more like it. So since we've got kind of a complex sort of finger pose here, I'm going to actually use that kind of wireframe technique. So I'm going to have one finger sort of here, one about here, and then index and pointer connecting right here. I'm just kind of dividing that area up to see where all my fingers are going to go. I'm going to extend one phalange going this way. I'm going to extend one. It's probably going to come from about here, actually. Going this way. And then this one kind of folds in. Almost disappears. I can kind of start drawing that in. So when I come in and I want to draw the actual finger, it'll look a little something like this. Part of why it's hard to draw hands is hands are freaking weird. Like, if you look at the reference sheet, this is a weird position that the hand's in. It's super complex. It's like somebody doing advanced yoga moves and you trying to draw their bodies. It's just trickier than usual. Alright, so I'm going to sketch kind of my wireframe technique again. This one looks like it goes at a little more of an upward angle like this. And then it kind of goes up above where the other fingers are going to attach, over to here, and kind of over this direction. And I can adjust it, because it maybe doesn't look like it goes as high as I did the center. So I'll kind of turn that into the top. And then connect this one here, move it this way. And go like that. Looks a little better. And then we've got our other two. So this one's going to come up like this. These two are kind of together, so I'm going to use that kind of mitt technique. I'm going to come up like that. And then over this way. And over to here. So I'm going to just kind of draw the shape of both of them together to start. And then I'll separate them. So then when I separate them, we've actually got middle finger kind of like this right here. Coming to about here. An index finger more like this. Alright. Then the thumb. Kind of got the mass of the, I don't know what that is, like the thumb web here, that thick thumb web. It's a good description of it. And we got kind of that round palm of the thumb right there. It comes down like that. We've actually got some good flex on that thumb, so we can bulk it up a little bit. We've got like a little muscle mass right in here. You got another one right in here. And depending on the position of the hand, you can see it kind of flexes or relaxes. You've got another one back here as well. So those are the three kind of masses to look at. I'm going to make this look more like the edge of a hand and pull this out. And then add a little bit of mass there. This one probably comes down a little bit more. Alright, I don't want to get too complicated. I want to keep these simple and not get too far in to start. So if we're feeling pretty good about drawing from our own hand or about drawing from the sheet, you can also try making up a pose. So let's just try a simple pose that we make up. So I'm going to do like just a kind of 2-finger peace sign type thing. So I think that's a pretty simple pose. So here's my palm. Here's my wrist. The arm comes down like this. And so we're going to have like kind of a mitt shape here. Thumb like this. And then the 2 fingers. It's like kind of mass in the mitt shape, taking up approximately half of the area. We'll have it go up a little bit above the knuckles. If you have a hard time envisioning things, feel free to pose it. That's fine. You know, I have kind of the top of the thumb right here. I'm going down into the meat area here. And then we'll have the 2 fingers. Middle finger is going to be a little bit longer probably than the palm. Uh-oh, naughty. Let's add the index finger in there quickly before you guys screenshot it and get me in trouble. Alright. And then after I get that all kind of sketched in, I can break it up and add detail to it if I want to. Soften that up a little bit. Let out a little bit. Alright, so just alternate between doing hands from a reference, either your own hand or one of the sheets, and hands from the imagination. And if the hands from the imagination are a disaster right now, that's okay. You'll get better the more you work from a reference and the better you understand the structures involved. So if you want to just focus on reference hands, that's fine too. But make sure you get some reference practice in between if you are doing imaginary hands. Okay? And let's see. I'm going to have you work until 2. So you've got 13 minutes to get as many hands as you can. Let me make sure I understand the schedule, because I've been doing that wrong all day too. Yeah, so we'll work until 2, and that'll leave you 5 minutes to photograph. So just try to get as many hands on like your 2 sheets as you can. You can vary the size. It's definitely a good idea to practice drawing like smaller hands, right? Because that's a whole trickier, or it's not necessarily trickier, but it's a whole different challenge. Also, feel free to draw some bigger hands because I think that'll help you understand the structures a little bit better. Okay? Alright, I'm going to keep working, but you feel free to work at your own pace and on whatever hands you want. If you want to work with me, that's fine, but feel free to kind of set off on your own as well at this point. Work on this fist. The palm structure. Wrist. Can you guys hear the goats screaming outside? Some really incredible goats pretending to be people outside screaming. It's quite disturbing and wonderful. No, but the neighbor does. And one of them screams like a man. He goes, "Ah!" I'm always like, I get it. I understand, buddy. Just because you're a goat doesn't mean you can't have a existential terror fit. They made like a horror movie that all takes place over like Zoom, right? Do you guys know if they ever made one that's like all like Ring doorbell camera footage? Because I feel like that might be interesting. I don't know if you do the whole thing that way, but certain stuff that way. That'd be pretty creepy. My cousin was showing me a video of people stealing his mail, and I was like, getting ready for Freddy Krueger to jump out of the bushes. Never happened though, it wasn't very exciting. Just some guy stole his mail. I'm gonna do this like splayed palm one. So this is the one where the hands like open like this. This might be a good one to do just more gesturally. We also want to think about like really exaggerating the poses when we set our own. The same way if you were having somebody pose their body for like an exciting comic book scene, you might want to exaggerate it. Kind of do that with your hand poses too as you work on them. Make them a little more interesting. After I get my gesture in there, I can kind of come back in and add a little more detail to it. Or make corrections if I need to. They're kind of boring. I guess we could do that Spocky hand. You can see we've got like a rhythm through here, through these, where it connects to the palm. It's almost like flowing into this thumb line here. So that's a good thing to look out for, is where's the thumb, or where's the tip of the thumb in relation to the end of the palm in a given pose. Maybe a little shorter. All right. General advice: if you hate drawing hands, draw hands until you love drawing hands. I don't know. That's probably the same for most things in art. If you have an interest in being able to draw them, and the hands are just like not easy to get around drawing. You know, if you're drawing characters with hands behind their back, we all know what you're doing. So anyway, try to practice those. Try not to worry too much about where you're at. Just try to, practice and get a little better each time you do it. And try to work those basic structures until you get that down. And then try to work on details slowly but surely until you are pretty confident with what you're doing. And we might work on these a little bit more in the future. But that's kind of the intro and the basics of how to draw those, okay? So go ahead and photograph what you've got.